This video takes simulating civilization in Minecraft to a whole other level, or more specifically, to a whole other age, the nuclear age. Players are able to create civilization as usual for this kind of social experiment, only in my video, they are equipped with everything from huge pieces of machinery to assault rifles and nuclear reactors. There is one possible win condition that players can strive toward should they wish, and that is making a fission bomb. Since it's up to the players to simulate civilization, they can use whatever means necessary to further this goal. Players could unify and work together, or they could deal in subterfuge and thievery. Oh, and of course, there's always all-out war. Roughly 100 players are divided into 4 teams: the oil team, the uranium team, the steel team, and the rare metals team. The team names correspond to the resource deposits each team starts with. Each team's starting location on the map also has an abandoned structure that will aid the team in whatever specific resource they must extract. Having starting resources to extract for your team is great, but unfortunately for the players, resources from all 4 areas of the map are needed to create the fission bomb. This is the challenge that the civilization must overcome if any one team wishes to win. Of course though, just because the challenge exists to be overcome doesn't necessarily mean that it will be. There is always the risk, with any civilization, that it will slip into chaos and anarchy. If you want to try out this mod pack for yourself, you can head on over to CurseForge using the link in the description. Big shout out to Ish13C and Magic Gum for inspiring this video. If you want to see more like it in the future, consider leaving a like and subscribing down below. Rare Metals team started in a nice little plains biome next to a big plateau where their abandoned structure is. And the first thing they had to do along with everyone else was acquire some flint to make flint tools, because wood tools are actually disabled in this mod pack. It did not take them long to reach the factory, however, but luckily for them, the server is on peaceful for the first 60 minutes, so they don't have to deal with any of the mobs guarding the factory quite yet. In contrast to the Rare Metals team, who quickly grouped up at the factory, the Uranium team members were scattered pretty far and wide, mining in various different locations around the map, wherever they could find some ore. Several members even located a ravine pretty fast and set up a little shop there. It certainly didn't take very long for a couple of them to reach the abandoned laboratory and remove some of the mob spawners there before they could start spawning mobs. Oil team spawned in a desert, which happened to contain a desert temple, which seems like it would be a good thing for them at first, but then this happened. While Oil Team was having fun blowing up the desert temple, a member of Uranium Team by the name of Tank 4 was sneaking over in that direction and eventually reached the desert temple after it was blown up. They would then attempt to claim their first victim, an unlucky Oil Team member who also was down in the pit, but they would log out before they could die. Luckily for Tank 4, just moments later they would have another chance at a victim. Another unsuspecting Oil Team member arrived at the scene and was not as lucky as the first one. It was a pretty good time for the members of Oil Team who weren't stuck in exploded desert temples though. They had started reaching the abandoned aircraft carrier and were busily looting it for any available stuff, which, mind you, there was a lot of. There were quite a few guns and ammunition crates to be had throughout the ship. It only took a little bit of looking. There were several of them scattered throughout the savannah, but most of them are making their way to the carrier, and so many people were getting achievements that it was basically a fireworks show on the aircraft carrier for a brief time. I say most of the Oil Team members were on the aircraft carrier because there was at least one of them who was really far away in the middle of the map exploring an abandoned structure next to spawn. Except for a couple Steel Team members who were still in a big marshy area, most of them had left and were congregating in a village in the middle of a forest near their abandoned mining site. The village served as a good place to live, with lots of houses offering protection right away. I noticed a disturbing trend starting to take shape only after a couple minutes of the server being open, and that was tons of people dying to falling trees. In fact, I'm pretty sure that falling trees had the highest kill count of any single thing in the game aside from players killing other players. The problem was that early on, the server was pretty laggy, and people were dying to trees after they'd already disappeared, like you can see in this clip.
This is so scary. Okay. Let's go, timber. What?
It was starting to get ridiculous how many people were dying to trees, so I decided to respawn anyone who died to a falling tree within the first 60 minutes of the event, which is why both of those guys are alive there. Anyone who died to falling trees after the 60 minutes was up though wouldn't get respawned because everyone's supposed to be in hardcore. Amid the falling tree chaos, Steel Team was doing pretty well. They were pretty organized, they had a nice base, they'd started digging a little farm out underneath one of the houses, and they were setting up shop inside the largest village house. But I don't think anyone was doing as well as Oil Team was because they had just discovered that there were a lot of steel blocks that made up the aircraft carrier that could be harvested and turned into all kinds of useful things. Except for this one guy on Oil Team, almost getting stuck in quicksand trying to get some flint. He's totally not going to be important. You're not going to want to remember the name Trigger. Definitely not. Oil Team's success would not last for a very long time though, as another member of Uranium Team, Yanni Diamond, was in the process of sneaking on board the aircraft carrier. They journeyed all the way from their base just to infiltrate and cause problems. Completely unbeknownst to the happy members of Oil Team, Yanni Diamond was sneaking through various little hallways in the ship, barely going unnoticed for several moments. They decided to grab some of the steel blocks just like Oil Team, but eventually made it to the bottom of the ship, and this is where things went bad for Oil Team as they discovered the intruder on their ship. Yanni Diamond successfully eliminated 2 members of Oil Team and even managed to escape the ship, mostly unharmed, despite taking heavy fire from people with sniper rifles on the deck. Even though they successfully had driven off Yanni Diamond, Oil Team's problems weren't over, because at that point, Peaceful was disabled and mobs started to spawn. In this case, lots of military mobs from the various spawn points located around the aircraft carrier. They did fare relatively well though, because they were pretty well armed and they had managed to block off some of the spawn points on the deck. I believe only one of the actual Oil Team members died to a military mob. Most of Uranium Team was just busy chilling at a nearby village that they had located. Very few of them were at the laboratory, and pretty much all of Metal's team was at their factory. They were very coordinated and probably the least spread out of all the teams. Maybe if there had been more players at Uranium Team's laboratory, they would have been able to stop the one intruder from Metal's team who did not stick with the group. Oxy83, from what I heard, I never got footage from this. No one seemed to have footage. Even the people recording with replay mod on other teams got this. But apparently Oxy raided the laboratory early on, blew it up, and stole essentially all of the isotopes from Uranium Team. But unfortunately for Oxy and their team, they met an unfortunate death by withering away at one point, and presumably all of the isotopes were lost to time as they were never seen again. Actually, that may not be entirely true, since I've heard rumors since recording that the isotopes may have ended up with one blueberry pie. Uranium Team was having a tough time. Even when they returned to the laboratory after Oxy was gone, they found that there were a lot of mobs around the surface. One of them met their end, unfortunately to a zombie, but they did start retrofitting and fixing the blown up remains of the lab to turn it into a nice base. Remember that player from Uranium Team by the name of Tank 4 who eliminated the Oil Team person in the Desert Temple? Well, they were on the move again, this time sneaking over to Metal's team base. They were holed up in the mountain for a little while, seeing if they could get an opening to attack. After a little while, they did start pressing the attack and tried to snipe someone from the cliff with a bow, but it didn't go quite according to plan for them. Life Dragon chased them all the way into the forest, and they probably would have chased them even farther and eventually gotten the kill. But right about here, the replay just ends because that's where Tank 4 disconnected from the game to avoid dying, and thereby pauses the story of this one particular uranium member. Meanwhile, the rest of Metal Team was happily mining a gigantic iron deposit that they found underground, including an abandoned mine shaft and a bunch of other cool stuff. And it seemed like their biggest problem, judging by the voice chat, was trying to get everyone linked in questbook parties in the questbook mod.
To the quest party thing.
I think I remember someone saying they needed cave roots a long time ago.
Yeah, same.
Jim_Kerman.
Also, what is the benefit of a party?
I cannot share a single tip.
Can
Okay, who isn't invited in the quest party?
Me.
Lucky Levis.
So ridiculous, Scott.
That evening at the aircraft carrier, I found it almost completely deserted of players, which is in a strange contrast to this meeting that the oil team members held not long before.
Whoever has a weapon, please go on this side. Whoever doesn't, go on that side.
Yeah, what's what side?
I have. By weapon, do you mean
more
gun or
Gone. Yes,
anything?
gone. And okay, so basically everyone here with armor has weapons. How many weapons do you guys have?
I have this awesome sniper rifle and a grenade launcher.
I have three snipers.
Okay, so I'm gonna say let's try to make this our base. Let's scour around as a group and try to find like rooms and places where we can put chests in. And whoever wants to use sniper rifles to the other team members can do so kindly.
One. Who picks it up?
From that clip of that meeting, it would seem that Drift was the leader of Oil Team, and they decided to move from the aircraft carrier to a mountain range next to the ocean a little ways away. But unbeknownst to them and their new leader, a tragedy was about to befall Oil Team.
Stand on to the side.
You guys
How
are
is it only
gonna
midnight?
all join me in Oxide dead.
No!
Dude!
No.
How could you, Trigger? You
I
killed.
said I was ahead.
You killed. Trigger, you. Trigger, you killed our leader. How could you? No, it's Trigger, not Tigger.
What?
I see him.
Trigger just shot us.
Why?
Oh, dude, I'm good.
Freak.
Apparently Trigger had heard them plotting to hunt him down for accidentally killing their leader and decided to put a stop to that before they could even get started by eliminating almost all of Oil Team in one go with a sniper rifle. I was never able to fully confirm what happened to Trigger after killing the Oil Team members, but the rumor has it that he died to a falling tree somewhat later on. With Oil Team absent from the aircraft carrier and scattered throughout the map in small numbers, other teams were free to venture to the aircraft carrier and start looting it, which is what a couple members of Uranium Team did. The only opposition they faced was some mobs, and apparently, judging by this clip, themselves. I feel bad that one Uranium member up there looks so sad. Right on the heels of the Uranium Team people, a Steel Team member showed up at the aircraft carrier to grab, well, I guess steel, in addition to mining a bunch of the parts of the steam turbines to presumably turn into other machines. Back at the abandoned factory, the metal players decided to cannibalize their arc furnace and try to make a crusher from the components of it plus some of their own stuff. Also, they had a nice little grave for Oxy, their fallen hero. Eventually they did manage to make the crusher, but they were also freezing to death during the night. And to make matters worse, a tornado was heading their way just outside of the world border, and their base was not fully sealed up. Luckily for them, the tornado ended up passing a little bit to the left of their base. It didn't actually hit it, but it was pretty close by. It's probably not advisable standing in the crusher, maybe not a great idea. The two Uranium members, Anarchy and Explosion, who were at the aircraft carrier a little bit ago, now began their journey in a different direction. They were headed toward Metal Team's base. Unfortunately, Explosion met their end at the hands of a zombie police officer in an abandoned structure, but Anarchy continued on and made it to the metal base up on a hill.
When?
8.
Oh.
Try. No, he's 8. Look. Come afar and see if it works. I'll be top of the hill.
I'm at an old base.
Where are you?
Nope, 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 nope.
I'm at an old base.
Keep walking.
Yes, yes. You hit the crusher. You hit the crusher.
You can see them in there.
Yep, yep, yep. I'm watching them. I'm watching them.
Did I get one? No.
No, no, no. Bro, they're coming to you. They're coming for you.
It's not really gonna get up this hill.
Slowly, with a lot of determination. Oh yeah.
Oh, I see.
You're missing. No, don't try to hit them.
Somehow not a single person died directly to one of the rockets, but that didn't stop Danarchy. They were still lurking on the top of the hill. Unfortunately for them, the flamethrower is not a long-range weapon, but it didn't need to be, as shortly thereafter a metal team member arrived at the scene attempting to pursue Danarchy, and unfortunately was obliterated at close range by a combat shotgun. The rocket launcher rain of death from the hill didn't actually directly kill anyone, but it indirectly contributed to a lot of deaths later on, as the metal team was in disarray. Half of their machines were destroyed and they scattered in all directions. A couple of them went underground, some of them went to other parts of the map, and by the time Danarchy came back down, the entire place was essentially deserted. Everything had been removed and was scattered in various places. Few remaining metal team players who was still there. Pathetic Tim was almost killed by Danarchy, but he managed to escape back underground and hide. In fact, Danarchy almost met his end by Pathetic Tim, but narrowly managed to evade death. The story of our old friend Tank 4 resumes around about now, as they came back onto the server where they logged off before when they were getting chased, and they started sneaking up to the metal team base, but there wasn't really anyone there, except for Danarchy, which almost was enough to kill Tank. Danarchy apparently mistook Tank for someone else and opened fire and barely did not kill Tank. For some reason there was a tornado just sitting still over the bunker on the hill, and it turned out that Pathetic Tim had a weather machine and was controlling it underground, making a tornado. If only he kept the tornado going a little bit longer, it might have been enough to kill the two Uranium team members, Danarchy and Tank, who were attacking the remaining metal player who was hiding in the bunker. Tank almost gets wrecked here, but is saved by Danarchy, but somehow neither of them managed to kill the metal team player, and the metal team player flees off into the wilderness. And then, in the moment of Uranium's triumph, disaster strikes. By this point, there were not very many players left alive. Many kept getting picked off one by mobs. Oil team was essentially decimated. The few remaining survivors were scattered everywhere and unorganized. Steel team was doing okay, but they kept getting picked off one by one. And there was only a couple hardened remaining members of metal team and uranium team left in the fight. Essentially, it was seeming very unlikely that anyone would be able to successfully create a bomb within any reasonable amount of time. A uranium member by the name of CWG, who we saw in the beginning of the video, had been living by themselves for a really long time and was actually progressing pretty far. They'd done a lot of stuff. I think the person they were with, Portable Steam, had died unfortunately at some point, but CWG was just continuing along until, unfortunately, they fell victim to the Nether.
Yeah. Not only do you have to worry about eating, you have to worry about drinking too. This ain't an easy task. What the? Let's see, what's he doing down here? Hi, is he watching the stream? It just magically disappears. Oh, portal lag?
No, like,
There's this tab at the top of your screen right next to the crafting table icon. You press that, there's like empty magazines and stuff in there.
Alright, I am in the nether. Oh, I see a fortress right there. Yo, this is how I die. Alright, back into the overworld. Nope, 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 nope. Oh, I'm dead.
The teams had pretty much been whittled down to a couple players left on Metals team and on Uranium team, and 1 or 2 left on Steel. One of the people left alive on Uranium was Tank 4, but unfortunately for Tank 4, they weren't long for this world, and their storyline ends in a blaze of fire. To mixed reactions. This one poor Metals team player died to a zombie literally as I teleported to them, and 3 of the other members on that team at the abandoned factory got to listen to one of their friends dying to a zombie soldier as they spawned into the game. On top of all that, the newly self-appointed Metal team leader died almost immediately after claiming the title of leader for their team. Here begins the interesting story of one Uranium team member, Fluff Squirrel. They lived a solitary life in the mountains, pretty far from the rest of their team for most of the game. And they had a bunker, they had some stuff. They did get a little bit toward the bomb, but at one point they rejoined some of their teammates back at the abandoned laboratory for the purpose of organizing a raiding party to go and attack what was left of the Rare Metals team base, the abandoned factory. After having a world war with the mobs outside during the nighttime, they started heading out across the tundra. Upon arriving at the Metal team base, they found everything abandoned. All that was left was a bunker with some stuff that they could grab from it. But when nighttime came, a lot of mobs started spawning and it turned into a bit of a war zone outside. Some of them even nearly died. They even went so far as to vandalize the interior of the bunker and destroy the grave sites outside for the fallen Metal team members. A new grave site was created for an unfortunate Metal team member who joined just as the Uranium members were about to leave. At this point, I gave the remaining alive players a hard and fast stop date for the event. They had 5 hours left for one more day on the server to do what they could toward the bomb or whatever they wanted before the server was going to close, because there was no way that people were making a bomb in any reasonable amount of time. At this point, there were too few people alive, too many people got picked off by mobs, and so this is what the remaining members did. Ghostplane and Fluff Squirrel, some of the remaining Uranium members, raided the aircraft carrier for any stuff that hadn't been salvaged. But unfortunately, one of them met their end by a couple remaining military mobs that were still inside the carrier. After escaping the aircraft carrier, Ghostplane found the remains of someone else who had died in the past due to some aliens guarding an ore deposit, and was able to make off with some sniper rifles. Meanwhile, Blueberry Pie, one of the few remaining Metal team players, was out scavenging resources from the abandoned structure that Steel team had not utilized. Right before the server ended, the Rare Metals team managed to assemble a nuclear reactor, thereby earning themselves a spot as the farthest along team to making the bomb. And Ghostplane, what did he do after escaping the aircraft carrier and getting the sniper rifles? Well, he made some blocks of gunpowder and blew up the spawn point for fun. This concludes our social experiment. Some would say that it was a failure. Some would say that the real winners are the friends we made along the way. But I say that the real winner of this social experiment is anarchy. The civilization slowly descended into chaos with civil wars and rogue bands of players hunting down other teams. the creation of a fission bomb was seemingly forgotten in the lust for violence. All the remains of once great civilizations are small bands of survivors barely managing to eke out a living in the wilderness. But I'd say that the overall morale of the players who participated in the event is pretty well summed up by this message. Lads, I'd like to say, if all of us who did leave returned to a place of disarray, lava traps, mobs, and death, it was an honor to be a part of such a phenomenal team. And I mean, there's always the space race. Don't know why I had to make that sound dramatic, but you know, Chad.